The horizon shimmered with heat waves when Ethan Sawyer first saw her, a dark speck against the endless expanse of sand and scrub brush, moving with the uncertain gait of someone who had pushed their body far beyond its limits. It was July 1878, and the New Mexico Territory stretched out in every direction like a golden ocean frozen in time. Ethan had been riding the fence line of the ranch where he worked, checking for breaks and ensuring the cattle had not wandered too far from the water sources that were becoming increasingly scarce as the summer drought tightened its grip on the land. His horse, a sturdy roan mare named Copper, had been the first to sense something amiss. Her ears had pricked forward and she had whinnied softly, drawing his attention to the figure in the distance. At first, Ethan thought it might be a mirage, one of those cruel tricks the desert played on travelers when the sun beat down mercilessly, and the air itself seemed to waver and dance. But as he urged Copper forward, the figure became more distinct, resolving into the unmistakable shape of a woman in a torn and dusty dress, her dark hair hanging loose and tangled around her shoulders. She was stumbling more than walking now, and even from a distance, Ethan could see that she was on the verge of collapse. He spurred Copper into a gallop, his heart pounding with a mixture of concern and curiosity. Who was this woman and what was she doing out here alone, miles from the nearest town? The questions tumbled through his mind as he closed the distance between them, but they were overshadowed by a more immediate concern. She needed help, and she needed it now. When he was close enough to call out, Ethan pulled Copper to a halt and dismounted quickly. The woman had stopped moving, swaying slightly on her feet as she turned to face him. Her face was burned by the sun, her lips cracked and bleeding, and her eyes held a wild, desperate look that sent a chill down his spine despite the oppressive heat. "Madam," he said gently, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm, "you need water." She stared at him for a long moment, as if struggling to process his words, and then her knees buckled. Ethan lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. She was lighter than he expected, her body wasted by dehydration and exhaustion, and he could feel her trembling in his arms. He carried her to the shade of a scraggly mesquite tree a few yards away and lowered her gently to the ground. Her eyes fluttered closed, and for a terrifying moment, he thought she might have died right there in his arms. But then her chest rose with a shallow breath, and he let out a sigh of relief. Ethan grabbed his canteen from Copper's saddle and knelt beside the woman. "Easy now," he murmured, supporting her head with one hand while he brought the canteen to her lips with the other. "Just a little at first. Too much will make you sick." She drank greedily, water spilling down her chin and onto her tattered dress, and he had to pull the canteen away to keep her from consuming too much too quickly. She made a small sound of protest, reaching weakly for the water, and his heart clenched at the desperation in the gesture. "I know," he said softly. "I know you want more, but you have to trust me, just a little at a time." He gave her another small sip, then another, watching her face carefully for signs of distress. Gradually, some of the wildness faded from her eyes, replaced by a weary awareness. She looked at him properly for the first time, and he was struck by the intelligence he saw there, despite her obvious suffering. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse and barely audible. "Do not thank me yet," Ethan replied with a slight smile. "We need to get you somewhere safe." "Can you tell me your name?" She hesitated, and he saw fear flicker across her features. Whatever had brought her out here into the wilderness, it had not been by choice, and she was not sure if she could trust him. He could not blame her for that. "My name is Ethan Sawyer," he said, keeping his voice calm and steady. "I work at the Double Bar Ranch about 5 miles west of here. I am not going to hurt you, and I am not going to ask you for anything you do not want to give. But you are going to die out here if we do not get you out of this heat." She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Rebecca," she said finally. "Rebecca Sterling. Well, Miss Sterling, it is nice to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Do you think you can ride if I help you?" Rebecca tried to push herself up, but her arms gave out and she sagged back against the tree trunk. Ethan could see the frustration and shame in her expression, and he shook his head quickly. "That was a foolish question," he said. "Of course you cannot ride. I will take you up with me. It will not be the most comfortable journey, but it is better than staying out here." He gave her more water, then fashioned a makeshift sunshade from his bandana and his hat, trying to protect her ravaged skin from further damage. When he was satisfied that she had drunk enough to sustain her for the ride back, he lifted her carefully into his arms and carried her to Copper. The mare stood steady as he mounted awkwardly, settling Rebecca in front of him so that she could lean back against his chest. She was barely conscious now, the brief surge of energy that had allowed her to speak fading rapidly. The ride back to the ranch seemed to take forever. Ethan kept one arm wrapped securely around Rebecca's waist, holding her against him to keep her from falling, while his other hand guided Copper at a steady walk. The horse seemed to sense the urgency of the situation, and moved with unusual care, picking her way across the rough terrain without her usual spirited energy. As they rode, Ethan found himself acutely aware of the woman in his arms. He could feel the rapid flutter of her heartbeat, the shallow rise and fall of her breathing, and the way she occasionally stirred and murmured something incoherent. He wondered what she had been running from, what could have driven her to risk death in the unforgiving desert rather than stay wherever she had come from. The mystery of it nagged at him, but he pushed the questions aside. There would be time for answers later, assuming she survived. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon when the ranch buildings finally came into view. The Double Bar Ranch was not large by some standards, but it was well maintained, with a sturdy main house, a barn, a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, and several corrals. Ethan rode straight to the main house, where the ranch owner's wife, Maria Gonzalez, was tending her vegetable garden. Maria looked up at the sound of hooves, and her eyes widened when she saw the woman in Ethan's arms. She was on her feet instantly, wiping her hands on her apron as she hurried toward them. "Dios mío," she breathed. "What happened?" "Found her out in the desert," Ethan said as he dismounted carefully, still cradling Rebecca. "She has been walking for days by the look of her. She needs water, food, and rest in that order." Maria did not waste time with more questions. She led the way into the house, calling out instructions to her daughter Sophia, who appeared from the kitchen with wide, curious eyes. Together, the two women helped Ethan carry Rebecca to a small guest room at the back of the house. They laid her on the bed, and Maria immediately began assessing her condition with the practiced efficiency of someone who had tended many injuries and illnesses over the years. "She is severely dehydrated," Maria said, her brow furrowed with concern. "Her skin is badly burned, and I think she has twisted her ankle. But I do not see any signs of serious injury beyond that. If we can get fluids into her and keep her cool, she should recover." Ethan nodded, relief washing over him. "What do you need me to do?" "Go draw some cool water from the well and bring it here. Sophia will help me get her cleaned up and into something more comfortable. Then you should go tell my husband what happened. He will want to know." Ethan did as he was told, grateful to have something concrete to do. When he returned with the water, Maria shooed him out of the room, and he found himself standing in the hallway, uncertain what to do with himself. The adrenaline that had carried him through the rescue was fading now, leaving him feeling oddly hollow and restless. He went in search of Miguel Gonzalez, the ranch owner, and found him in the barn checking on a mare that was due to foal soon. Miguel listened intently as Ethan recounted the events of the afternoon, his weathered face grave. "You did the right thing bringing her here," Miguel said when Ethan had finished. "A woman alone in the desert like that, there is no telling what might have happened to her. But we need to be careful, Ethan. If she is running from something or someone, we could be bringing trouble down on ourselves." "I know," Ethan said. "But what else could I do? Leave her out there to die?" Miguel clapped him on the shoulder. "No, you could not have done that. You are a good man, Ethan. We will figure this out together, whatever comes." Over the next 3 days, Rebecca drifted in and out of consciousness, her body fighting to recover from the ordeal she had endured. Maria and Sophia took turns sitting with her, coaxing water and broth into her whenever she was alert enough to swallow. Ethan found himself checking on her progress frequently, though he tried to tell himself it was simply concern for a fellow human being and nothing more. On the 4th day, Rebecca woke fully for the first time. Ethan had been sitting in a chair by the window, reading an old newspaper when he heard her stir. He looked up to find her eyes open and clear, taking in her surroundings with a mixture of confusion and wariness. "You are at the Double Bar Ranch," he said gently, setting the newspaper aside. "You have been asleep for a few days. How are you feeling?" Rebecca pushed herself up slowly, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles. "Like I was trampled by a herd of cattle," she said, her voice still hoarse but stronger than it had been, "but alive, thanks to you." "The Gonzalez family did most of the work," Ethan said. "I just brought you here." "You saved my life," Rebecca said firmly. "Do not diminish that." They looked at each other for a long moment, and Ethan felt something shift inside him, a connection forming that he could not quite explain. There was a strength in Rebecca's gaze that drew him in, a resilience that had allowed her to survive against impossible odds. "Would you like to tell me what you were doing out there?" he asked carefully. "Or is that too much to ask right now?" Rebecca's expression shuddered and she looked away. "I was running," she said finally, "from a man who thought he owned me." Ethan felt anger flare in his chest, hot and sudden. "Your husband?" "No." The word came out sharp and bitter. "A man named Joseph Crane. He owned the saloon in Silver City where I worked. I sang for his customers, served drinks, kept the peace when I could. It was not much, but it was honest work and it kept me fed. But Joseph decided he wanted more from me than just my labor. He said I owed him, that he had been generous in employing me when no one else would. He said I should be grateful for his interest." "But you were not," Ethan said quietly. "No," Rebecca confirmed. "I told him I was not interested." He did not take it well. He said if I would not give him what he wanted willingly, he would take it. So I ran. I took what little money I had saved and left in the middle of the night. I thought I could make it to Santa Fe, find work there. But I got turned around in the desert and I ran out of water. I thought I was going to die out there." "You almost did," Ethan said, "but you did not. You are safe now. Am I?" Rebecca's eyes were haunted. "Joseph Crane is not a man who lets go of things easily. If he finds out I am here, he will come for me." "Then we will deal with that if it happens," Ethan said with more confidence than he felt. "But for now, you need to focus on getting your strength back. Everything else can wait." Rebecca nodded slowly and some of the tension seemed to drain out of her. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked. "You do not know me. I could be lying about everything." "You could be," Ethan agreed, "but I do not think you are. And even if you were, it would not change the fact that you needed help and I was in a position to give it. That is all that matters." "You did not ask for anything in return," Rebecca said, her voice soft with wonder. "Not even my gratitude." Your gratitude is not something I need to ask for, Ethan said. It is yours to give or not as you see fit. I just did what any decent person would do. You would be surprised how few decent people there are in this world, Rebecca said, but I am starting to think you might be one of them. Over the following weeks, Rebecca's strength returned. Maria and Sophia welcomed her into the household with open arms, grateful for an extra pair of hands to help with the endless work that came with running a ranch. Rebecca proved to be quick to learn and willing to tackle any task, no matter how difficult or unpleasant. She helped in the kitchen, tended the vegetable garden, mended clothes, and even learned to milk the cow. Ethan watched her transformation with a mixture of admiration and growing affection. There was something magnetic about Rebecca, a combination of vulnerability and strength that drew him in despite his best efforts to maintain a respectful distance. He found himself looking for excuses to be near her, to hear her voice, to see the way her face lit up when she smiled, which was becoming more and more frequent as the days passed. They began taking walks together in the evenings, when the worst of the heat had passed, and the desert air turned cool and sweet. Ethan showed her the best places to watch the sunset, the hidden springs where wildlife came to drink, the ancient petroglyphs left by people who had lived on this land long before the white man arrived. Rebecca shared stories of her life before Silver City, of growing up in a small town in Missouri, of losing her parents to cholera when she was barely 16, of the long, difficult journey west in search of a better life. I thought California would be paradise, she said one evening as they sat on a flat rock overlooking a canyon painted in shades of orange and purple by the setting sun. I thought I would find gold in the streets, or at least opportunity. But I only made it as far as New Mexico before my money ran out. I took the job at Joseph's saloon because I had no other choice. I told myself it was temporary, that I would save enough to move on. But the years passed, and I was still there, still trapped. You are not trapped anymore, Ethan said. No, Rebecca agreed. But I do not know what comes next. I cannot stay here forever, no matter how kind the Gonzalez family has been. This is not my home. It could be, Ethan said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. If you wanted it to be. Rebecca turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face. What are you saying, Ethan? He took a deep breath, his heart pounding. I am saying that I care about you, Rebecca. More than I probably should, given that we have only known each other a few weeks. But I cannot help it. You are brave and strong and beautiful, and I think about you constantly. I do not want you to leave. I want you to stay here with me if you will have me. Ethan, Rebecca said, her voice trembling, I care about you too, more than I thought possible. But I have nothing to offer you. I am just a saloon girl with a dangerous man looking for me. You deserve better than that. You are not just anything, Ethan said fiercely. You are Rebecca Sterling, and you are more than enough. I do not care about your past or what you think you can or cannot offer. I only care about you and the way I feel when I am with you, like everything makes sense, like I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Tears welled up in Rebecca's eyes, and she reached out to take his hand. I feel the same way, she whispered. I have felt it from the beginning, from the moment you gave me water and asked for nothing in return. You showed me what kindness looked like, what it meant to be treated with respect and dignity. I fell in love with you then, I think, though I was too afraid to admit it. Ethan felt his heart soar. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away the tears that had begun to spill down her cheeks. Then stay, he said. Please, Rebecca, stay with me. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Yes, I will stay. He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and felt her melt against him. It was a kiss full of promise and hope, a seal on the future they would build together. When they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling, their foreheads resting together as they caught their breath. "I love you," Ethan said. "I love you too," Rebecca replied. They sat together on that rock until the stars came out, making plans and dreaming dreams, and for the first time since she had fled Silver City, Rebecca felt truly safe. She felt like she had finally found her home. The happiness of the next few weeks was marred only by the constant worry that Joseph Crane would discover her whereabouts. Ethan had sent word to a friend in Silver City, asking discreetly about Crane's movements, and the news that came back was not encouraging. Crane was indeed looking for Rebecca, offering a reward for information about her location. He had told people she had stolen from him, a lie that made Rebecca's blood boil with rage and helplessness. "We should go to the sheriff," Ethan said when he shared the news with her. "Tell him the truth about what happened. Crane cannot be allowed to get away with this." "The sheriff in Silver City is in Crane's pocket," Rebecca said bitterly. "He would never believe my word over Crane's. I have no proof of what happened, no witnesses who would speak on my behalf. It would be my word against his, and I am just a saloon girl while he is a respected businessman. You know how that would end." Ethan hated that she was right, but he could not deny the truth of her words. The justice system in the New Mexico territory was imperfect at best, and corruption was rampant. A man like Joseph Crane, with money and influence, could buy his way out of almost anything. "Then we will find another way," Ethan said. "I will not let him take you from me." Miguel Gonzalez, when consulted, was more pragmatic. "If Crane comes here, we will deal with him," he said. "But we cannot live in fear of what might happen. We have to go on with our lives. Ethan, you have been talking about building a house on that piece of land I sold you last year. Maybe now is the time to do it. Give Rebecca a proper home, something that is yours and hers. Show Crane and anyone else that she is under your protection." It was good advice, and Ethan threw himself into the project with enthusiasm. He had been saving money for years, planning for the day when he would have a place of his own. Now that day had come sooner than expected, but he was ready. With help from Miguel and the other ranch hands, he began constructing a small but sturdy house on a plot of land about a mile from the main ranch buildings. It had a good, fertile soil for a garden, and a view of the mountains that took Rebecca's breath away when he first showed her the site. "It is perfect," she said, her eyes shining. "I cannot believe you are doing all this for me." "I am doing it for us," Ethan corrected. "This is going to be our home, Rebecca, yours and mine, a place where we can build a life together." Rebecca threw her arms around him, and he held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair and feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. In that moment, he knew he would do anything to protect her, to keep her safe and happy. She had become the center of his world, the reason he woke up each morning with purpose and hope. The house took shape slowly but steadily. Ethan and the other men worked from dawn until dusk, laying the foundation, framing the walls, constructing the roof. Rebecca helped where she could, cooking meals for the workers and assisting with the lighter tasks. She also began planning the interior, excitedly discussing with Maria what furniture they would need, what colors to paint the walls, how to arrange the rooms for maximum comfort and efficiency. It was during this happy time that Joseph Crane finally made his appearance. He arrived at the Double Bar Ranch on a hot afternoon in late September, accompanied by two rough-looking men who were clearly hired muscle. Ethan was working on the house when one of the ranch hands came galloping up, his face tight with worry. "Boss says you better get back to the main house," the hand said. "There is trouble." Ethan did not need to ask what kind of trouble. He grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against the wall and swung up onto Copper's back, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anger. When he reached the main house, he found Miguel standing on the porch, his own rifle held loosely in his hands, facing down the three strangers. Joseph Crane was a tall man with slicked-back hair and cold eyes that reminded Ethan of a snake. He was dressed in an expensive suit that looked absurdly out of place on a working ranch, and he carried himself with the arrogant confidence of someone who was used to getting his way. "I am looking for a woman named Rebecca Sterling," Crane was saying as Ethan dismounted. "I have reason to believe she is here. She stole money from me and I want her brought to justice." "There is no thief here," Miguel said evenly. "Only honest people trying to make a living." "Then you will not mind if I have a look around," Crane said. It was not a question. "I mind very much," Miguel replied. "This is private property and you are not welcome here. I suggest you leave before I have you removed." Crane's eyes narrowed and he gestured to his two companions. "I do not think you understand the situation. I have the law on my side. Rebecca Sterling is a criminal and I have every right to search for her." "You do not have the law on your side out here," Ethan said, stepping forward. "You are on the Double Bar Ranch and Miguel Gonzalez is the law here. If he tells you to leave, you leave." Crane turned his cold gaze on Ethan, sizing him up. "And who might you be?" "Ethan Sawyer. I am the one who found Rebecca dying in the desert and brought her here. And I know the truth about what you did, Crane. She is not a thief. She is a victim, and you are the criminal." A dangerous smile played at the corners of Crane's mouth. "Big words from a ranch hand, but words do not matter much out here, do they? What matters is power, and I have plenty of that. If you are smart, you will hand the girl over and avoid any unpleasantness." "Get off this land," Ethan said, his voice hard as iron. "And if you come back, you will regret it." For a moment, the tension was so thick it was almost palpable. Crane's hand moved toward his coat, and Ethan raised his rifle, the click of the hammer being cocked echoing in the sudden silence. Behind him, he heard the door to the house open, and knew without looking that other ranch hands had come out, armed and ready to back him up. Crane must have done the math and realized he was outnumbered. The dangerous smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. "This is not over," he said. "You are making a mistake protecting her." "The only mistake would be letting you take her," Ethan said. "Now get on your horse and ride out of here before I change my mind about letting you leave at all." Crane stared at him for a long moment, then turned on his heel and stalked back to his horse. His two companions followed, casting nervous glances over their shoulders. They mounted up and rode away, but the threat hung in the air long after they had disappeared from view. Miguel lowered his rifle and let out a long breath. "That was close," he said. "But Crane is right about one thing. This is not over. He will be back, and next time he might bring more men." "Then we will be ready for him," Ethan said grimly. Inside the house, they found Rebecca standing in the hallway, her face pale and her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had heard everything, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I am sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I have brought this down on all of you. I should leave. I should go somewhere far away where Crane cannot find me." "No," Ethan said firmly. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. "You are not going anywhere. We will face this together." "He will come back," Rebecca said. "And he will bring more men. People could get hurt because of me." "People could get hurt because of him," Ethan corrected. "This is not your fault, Rebecca. None of this is your fault. Crane is the one who chose to be a monster. We are the ones choosing to stop him." Miguel cleared his throat. "There is another option," he said. "We could go to the territorial marshal in Santa Fe, explain the situation, ask for protection. If Crane is as corrupt as Rebecca says, there might be other women he has hurt, other people who would be willing to testify against him. It was a long shot, but it was better than waiting for Crane to return with an army. The next morning, Ethan and Rebecca set out for Santa Fe, accompanied by 2 of the ranch hands for protection. The journey took 3 days, and they spent the time talking, planning and dreaming of the future they would have once this nightmare was behind them. The territorial marshal, a grizzled man named William Barrett, listened to their story with a grim expression. When they had finished, he leaned back in his chair and rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "Joseph Crane," he said. "I have heard that name before. There was a girl in Albuquerque a few years back who accused him of assault. The case never went anywhere because she disappeared before it could go to trial. Witnesses said she left town of her own accord, but I always wondered if there was more to it than that." "There probably was," Rebecca said quietly. "Men like Crane do not like loose ends." "No, they do not," Barrett agreed. "But here is the thing, Miss Sterling. Even if everything you have told me is true, and I believe it is, I do not have jurisdiction in Silver City. The sheriff there would have to bring charges, and if he is as corrupt as you say, that is not going to happen. So there is nothing you can do." Ethan asked, frustration making his voice sharp. "I did not say that," Barrett replied. "What I can do is look into Crane's activities, see if there are any federal crimes I can charge him with. Fraud, maybe, or interstate crime if he has been conducting illegal business across territorial lines. It will take time, but if I can build a case, I can bring him down. In the meantime, I suggest you keep your head down and stay away from Silver City. If Crane comes after you again, defend yourselves, but do not go looking for trouble." It was not the reassurance they had hoped for, but it was something. They thanked the marshal and began the long journey back to the ranch, both of them lost in thought. "What if Barrett cannot find anything on Crane?" Rebecca asked as they made camp on the second night. "What if we have to live the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders?" "Then we will do that together," Ethan said. He took her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "I am not going to let fear control our lives, Rebecca. We are going to finish building our house, and we are going to get married, and we are going to be happy. Whatever comes, we will face it as husband and wife." Rebecca's breath caught. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I suppose I am," Ethan said with a smile. "Though I had planned to do it in a more romantic setting. But yes, Rebecca Sterling, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and let me spend the rest of my life making you happy?" "Yes," Rebecca said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married a month later in a small ceremony at the ranch, with Miguel and Maria standing as witnesses. Rebecca wore a simple white dress that Maria had helped her make, and Ethan wore his best suit, the one he had bought years ago for his father's funeral, and had never had occasion to wear since. It was a beautiful October day, cool and clear, and as they exchanged their vows under the wide New Mexico sky, Ethan felt a sense of rightness settle over him like a benediction. The house was finished by Thanksgiving, and they moved in with a sense of joy and accomplishment that made all the hard work worthwhile. It was not large, just 4 rooms and a small porch, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and filled with their own dreams. Rebecca threw herself into making it a home, sewing curtains for the windows, planting flowers in the yard, filling the shelves with books and small treasures they collected together. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, working side by side during the day and falling into each other's arms at night. Ethan had never been happier. Rebecca had a way of making even the most mundane tasks feel special, whether it was cooking breakfast or mending a fence. She had a quick wit and a beautiful laugh, and he loved the way she sang to herself as she worked, old songs from her childhood mixed with popular tunes from the saloon days she rarely spoke of. Winter came, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. They huddled together by the fire in the evenings, reading or playing cards or simply talking about everything and nothing. Ethan taught Rebecca to shoot, and she proved to be a natural, her aim steady and her nerve strong. He told himself it was just a practical skill for life on a ranch, but part of him wanted to know she could defend herself if Joseph Crane ever came back. But Crane did not return. Weeks turned into months, and gradually the fear that had haunted them began to fade. They heard through the grapevine that Marshall Barrett had indeed found evidence of Crane's wrongdoing, including embezzlement from some of his business partners in Santa Fe. Crane had been arrested and was awaiting trial. The news filled Rebecca with a sense of relief so profound that she wept for hours, finally allowing herself to believe that she was truly free. Spring brought new life to the desert. The wildflowers bloomed in riotous colors, and the air was sweet with the scent of rain. Rebecca discovered she was pregnant in April, and the joy on Ethan's face when she told him was something she would treasure for the rest of her life. "A baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Rebecca asked, suddenly nervous. They had never really discussed children, and she worried that it might be too soon, that he might not be ready. "Happy." Ethan laughed and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing too. "Rebecca, I am more than happy. I am ecstatic. I am the luckiest man alive." The pregnancy was not easy. Rebecca suffered from terrible nausea in the early months, and the summer heat made her swell and ache. But Ethan was attentive and loving, bringing her cool water and fanning her when the heat became unbearable, rubbing her feet when they hurt, reading to her in the evenings when she was too tired to do anything but lie on the bed and rest. Maria was a constant source of support and advice, having delivered 5 children of her own. She reassured Rebecca when the pregnancy symptoms frightened her, and taught her what to expect when the time came for the baby to be born. Sophia, now 16 and full of romantic notions, loved to feel the baby kick and spent hours talking to Rebecca's belly, telling the unborn child stories and singing lullabies. Their son was born on a cold January night in 1880, arriving during one of the worst snowstorms the region had seen in years. Ethan paced the main room of their house like a caged animal, while Maria and Sophia attended to Rebecca in the bedroom, his heart in his throat every time he heard her cry out. The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours, and by the time Maria finally emerged with a tiny, squalling bundle wrapped in blankets, Ethan was nearly out of his mind with worry. "You have a son," Maria said, her weathered face wreathed in smiles. "A big, healthy boy. And Rebecca is fine, just tired." Ethan took the baby with trembling hands, staring down at the tiny red face in awe. The infant had stopped crying and was gazing up at him with unfocused blue eyes, his little mouth working as if he were trying to figure out this strange new world he had been thrust into. "Hello, little one," Ethan whispered. "I am your papa." He carried the baby into the bedroom, where Rebecca lay propped up on pillows, her face pale and drawn but smiling. She held out her arms, and he placed their son gently in them, watching as she looked down at the baby with an expression of such fierce love that it made his chest ache. "He is perfect," she said softly. "Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Ethan asked, sitting on the edge of the bed and reaching out to stroke the baby's soft cheek. "I was thinking Thomas," Rebecca said. "After my father, Thomas Sawyer. What do you think?" "I think it is perfect," Ethan said. "Just like him, just like you." They sat together in the soft lamplight, the 3 of them, a family forged from hardship and held together by love. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. But inside their little house it was warm and safe and full of hope. Thomas proved to be a good baby, healthy and strong, with his mother's dark hair and his father's gray eyes. As he grew, it became clear that he had inherited Rebecca's stubbornness and Ethan's steady temperament, a combination that would serve him well in the years to come. He took his first steps on the day he turned 1, tottering across the floor into Rebecca's waiting arms, and spoke his first word, "Mama." A few weeks later, life settled into a new rhythm, busier and more chaotic than before, but no less happy. Ethan continued to work for the Double Bar Ranch, now as the foreman, a promotion Miguel had offered shortly after Thomas was born. The extra money allowed them to make improvements to their house and to start building up their own small herd of cattle. Rebecca managed their home with the same efficiency she brought to everything else, caring for Thomas while also tending the garden, preserving food for the winter, and helping Ethan with the ranch work whenever she could. They heard that Joseph Crane had been convicted of embezzlement and sentenced to 10 years in the territorial prison. The news brought a sense of closure to that dark chapter of their lives, and Rebecca found herself able to think about her time in Silver City without the accompanying fear and shame. She had survived, she had escaped, and she had built a new life on her own terms. That was worth celebrating. When Thomas was 3, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect, or perhaps because she was simply stronger and more confident in her own body. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1883, arriving quickly and easily compared to Thomas's difficult birth. They named her Emily, after Ethan's mother, and she was a sunny, cheerful baby who rarely cried and seemed to find delight in everything. Ethan watched his family grow with a sense of gratitude that never faded. Every morning when he woke up next to Rebecca, every evening when he came home to the sound of his children's laughter, he remembered that day in the desert when he had first seen her, a dark speck against the endless horizon. He thought about how easily he could have missed her, could have been looking the other way, or decided to ride a different section of the fence line. One small change, and none of this would have happened. He would not have found her, would not have fallen in love with her, would not have built this life that felt like a miracle. "What are you thinking about?" Rebecca asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching Thomas chase fireflies while Emily dozed in her arms. "How lucky I am," Ethan said. "How close I came to missing all of this." "You did not miss it, though," Rebecca said, leaning her head against his shoulder. "You found me. You saved me. And then you loved me when I did not think I was worth loving." "You were always worth loving," Ethan said fiercely. "Always, Rebecca, from the very first moment." She turned her face up to his and he kissed her softly, tasting the salt of tears on her lips. They were not sad tears, though. They were the tears of someone who had walked through fire and emerged on the other side, scarred but unbroken, surrounded by love and light. The years passed in a blur of birthdays and holidays, of first days of school and scraped knees and bedtime stories. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved animals and spent hours helping his father with the cattle. Emily was more outgoing, with a mischievous streak that kept her parents on their toes and a talent for singing that reminded Ethan of Rebecca in the evenings when she used to hum to herself as she worked. In 1887, Rebecca gave birth to their third child, another son they named Daniel. He was the image of Ethan, with light brown hair and a stubborn chin, and he came into the world yelling at the top of his lungs, as if offended by the very idea of being born. Rebecca laughed through her exhaustion, declaring that they definitely had their hands full now. The ranch prospered under Ethan's management, and Miguel, now in his 60s and thinking about retirement, offered to sell Ethan a larger parcel of land at a price he could afford. It was an opportunity too good to pass up, and with Rebecca's enthusiastic support, Ethan accepted. They now owned nearly 300 acres, enough to run a decent-sized herd and maybe even expand in the future. It was around this time that they received word that Joseph Crane had died in prison, killed in a fight with another inmate. Rebecca felt nothing when she heard the news, no satisfaction or sadness, just a sense of finality. That part of her life was truly over now, buried in the past where it belonged. As their children grew older, Ethan and Rebecca made sure to tell them the story of how they had met, though they softened some of the darker details. They wanted their children to understand that life was not always easy, that sometimes people faced impossible choices and terrible hardships. But they also wanted them to know that kindness mattered, that helping someone in need was never the wrong thing to do, and that love could bloom even in the harshest circumstances. Thomas eventually took over the day-to-day running of the ranch, proving to have his father's skill with animals and his mother's head for business. Emily married a young lawyer from Santa Fe and moved to the city, though she visited often and filled the house with her laughter and her growing brood of children. Daniel followed in his father's footsteps, working as a ranch hand and eventually becoming foreman of a large spread near Albuquerque. Ethan and Rebecca grew old together, their hair turning gray and their bodies slowing down, but their love never dimming. They spent their days sitting on the porch they had built together all those years ago, watching the sun set over the mountains and reminiscing about the life they had shared. "Do you ever regret it?" Rebecca asked one evening when they were both in their 60s. "Finding me in the desert that day, I brought so much trouble into your life." "Never," Ethan said firmly, "not for a single second. You brought love into my life, Rebecca. You brought joy and purpose and meaning. You gave me a family and a reason to wake up every morning with a smile on my face. How could I possibly regret that?" "I love you," Rebecca said, her voice still as strong and clear as it had been when she was young. "I have loved you from the beginning, and I will love you until the end." "And I love you," Ethan replied, "more than words can say." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, their hands clasped together, two souls bound by a love that had been forged in the unforgiving desert and tempered by the trials they had faced together. They had built a good life, a happy life, and they had done it by holding on to each other through everything. When Ethan passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 71, Rebecca grieved deeply, but without regret. She had been blessed with 43 years of marriage to a man who had shown her what true love looked like, who had asked for nothing, but had given her everything. She lived another 5 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, telling stories and passing on the wisdom she had gained through a lifetime of hard-won experience. On a warm spring day in 1909, Rebecca Sterling Sawyer passed away surrounded by her family, her hand held by her eldest son Thomas. Her last words were, "Tell your father I am coming," and there was a smile on her face. They buried her next to Ethan on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. On the simple headstone, Thomas had inscribed the words that his father had lived by. He gave her water and rest and asked for nothing. And in return, she gave him her heart. It was a love story for the ages, born in the harshest of circumstances, and sustained by the simple act of one person choosing to help another. It was a reminder that even in the wild, unforgiving landscape of the Old West, kindness could flourish, and love could conquer all. And though Ethan and Rebecca were gone, their legacy lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the stories that were told and retold around family tables, and in the ranch that still stood as a testament to what two people could build when they faced the world together, hand in hand, heart to heart.